begins with the group called Smile, I guess. I'm not very good on dates. I can never remember how long ago exactly it was. We should have brought some biographies and things, shouldn't we?
I have one right here.
Oh, okay. Tell me.
1968. That's the right way of saying.
So it says here, 1968, when he met guitarist Brian May. Oh, that's me, yeah. Right, okay. Well, that was it, yes. It was Roger Taylor, drummer, and myself formed a group called Smile, and that was a three-piece with a guy called Tim Staffel as a singer, a very good singer, in fact. And we began doing other people's material of the day and gradually began to start writing our own material. And a couple of the songs which we do now go back to that time, in fact, Doing All Right does. And I'm trying to think, there may be a couple more. We play at a club or a pub or a college, and sometimes we go down well, and sometimes we felt we played well, but the thing never progressed because you go to a different place the next night and you start all over again at the bottom, you know. So it was our big ambition to make an album of our own songs, and we didn't see any way of doing it in the setup of Smile, so we gave up, more or less. And it was only because we knew Freddie at the time, and Freddie was very keen on getting a group together that we thought we'd give it another go. So we teamed up with Freddie, which must be, it says here in the biography, 71 or so, and looked for bass players and eventually found John Deacon. That was quite a long story in itself. But from that time, about 1971, we were existing and writing and rehearsing as Queen.
Was it very hard to get the first demo tapes that album sort of
to? That was the big step, really, getting the demo tapes done in the first place, and we're lucky in that we managed to get some fairly good quality ones done, because we found someone who wanted to set up a studio and wanted basically someone to go in and make some noise for them, which we did, and in return they gave us the use of the studio for 2 days, I think. And we made 4 tracks on our own, which would Keep Yourself Alive, Liar, The Night Comes Down, and Jesus, all of which went on the first album. Very raw, very pretty unsophisticated.
There's a couple of tracks that we'd like to cover if we could, just off that album that were played a lot in Australia.
Yeah.
And one obviously was Liar.
Yeah.
Tell us about that one.
Yeah, Liar, that was something which came together in bits and pieces, and we used to play it on stage, and gradually it got expanded and more things crept in and things got thrown out. And it was one of those songs which just gradually took shape.
Yeah.
That is the form which the song had arrived at when we made the first album. If we hadn't made that album at that time, songs like Lie would have just gone on changing and evolving, and probably past their peak. Ended up going with none of the record companies. We went with a production company called Trident, and the idea was that we made the album and then the complete album was taken round and offered to the record companies again. And again, cut the long story short, it took, let me see, between 18 months and 2 years for all this to happen. And we're getting very frustrated and thinking that the album was never going to come out. But eventually, Trident signed our product to EMI. So we weren't really an EMI band as such, we were subcontracted, if you like.
Yeah.
We fulfilled a few of our sort of early dreams in that first album. The first dream was to actually make an album, which was such a big thing, you know, to be able to put something down which people would be able to listen to in a few years' time. That's something I've been wanting to do for such a long time. You see, we're not really in any particular generation as a band, you know, we're
pretty came actually in between the decades, in between that music change, didn't you? Really?
Yeah, it's between things like Cream and today's groups, like TCC or...
TCC,
yeah.
And that sort of...
Yeah, we were sort of evolving our music at the same time as people like Cream and Jimi Hendrix and things, but not able to put them on disc. So by the time we did get onto disc, we were quite a long way down our particular line of development. So it had advantages and disadvantages, and I think it made us a subject for a lot of attack because people don't like, particularly the press, don't like people to suddenly come along with a something which looks like a sophisticated product, but someone they haven't heard of, you know. They would have liked it if we'd been known in groups before Queen was formed, you know, and they would have understood our development, but they didn't.
The other one is, of course, Keep Yourself Alive, which always, I remember the first time I heard it, I thought, wow, it came on so strong. It was a really rush.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that had been around for quite a while as well. Yeah. Keep Yourself Alive had the sort of hard rock backing with harmony overlay, which we always wanted to do, and we felt nobody had really done before. It had recognisable guitar harmonies, which at that time hadn't really been done. Nothing very much happened. We didn't get any sort of notice from the press or whatever, and we weren't playing very many dates because we still couldn't get them really. And the next big thing after the album, I would say, was going on the Mott the Hoople tour, and we supported Mott the Hoople on a British tour, about 30 dates or so, and that was a very, very good thing for us because the kind of audiences which went to see Mott the Hoople liked us. We and the two bands worked together very well. We got on well with them and everything. And from that time on, the people began to know about the album, because before then there was not much chance of people knowing, you know. People had to see it before they know. It didn't show in the charts at all. I remember sort of looking at the charts every week as we came around, and there's still no chance of getting in, you know.
Buying the copies of Melody Maker.
And Melody Maker would write these huge reviews on Mott the Hoople, and then at the bottom they say Queen also played, you know. So we were getting very disgusted with that. We finished that tour and we went straight back in the studio to do the second album, which was logical really, because we'd already had ideas about the second album in making the first one. So the first album we saw as just putting the stage act on tape, but we also had ideas for making an album, you know, as an entity rather than just a reproduction of what we did on stage. And that's when I think our basic philosophy of albums got hammered out, really. And from that moment on, we always thought that there was no point in trying to make the live thing and the album thing exactly the same. They should be parallel but different, because the kind of things you want on an album, which you listen to over and over again, are very different from the things you want to hear and see at a live concert. So we did some things on that album which we couldn't do on stage very easily. Particularly the Black Queen and White Queen tracks, which are sort of complementary on each side, we completely went to town on, and built up a sort of guitar and voice orchestra in the studio, which had never been done at that time. And so we felt we'd achieved miracles on the album, and we're just waiting for everyone to say how amazing it was. And the reviews were just like the worst in the whole world. But the reception from the audiences and the fans was great. It went straight into the charts. I remember seeing a review in the Melody Maker or something saying, if this record makes the charts, I'll eat my hat or something. And in the same issue, it came into charts at number 7 or something. So we were really pleased, and that established us in almost every country of the world as being an interesting recording group, I think.
Just on that album, there's a couple of tracks we'd like to get into.
Yeah.
One was the first single, I think, success for the band, Seven Seas of Life.
That was interesting. Again, that was a song which nearly went on the first album. In fact, there is a little taster of it on the end of the first album.
That's right.
Yeah. We said, we're going to make something which they're going to have to play. And we went out and did it on tour, and the single went into the charts without anybody playing it on the radio, and they eventually did have to play it. And we thought it was fairly immediate anyway. I mean, there's everything in there, everything but the kitchen sink is in that track.
There must be a story behind that, because listening to the words is quite a fantasy in itself.
Yeah, that was Freddie's dream at the time. Really. He was interested in sort of folklore kind of thing. I don't really know what it's about, to be honest.
It was good fun playing on it, right?
Yeah, that was one of the very few tracks which Freddie's written, which are actually sort of basically guitar oriented, because he was playing around on the guitar at that time, which he doesn't really do anymore. I remember him sort of playing around the Lego Battle and saying, look, this is how it should be. That was just the time when he started to take his piano playing seriously and didn't want to write songs on the guitar anymore.
Yeah. Can you tell us how you achieved that sound in the studio?
What, for the backwards thing? You just turned the tape over and spliced it on. It's very curious because it comes from the end of the song, that bit, and let me see. We took it home, and not being very familiar with the way studio tapes were done, it was a one-sided tape. It was a full-track tape, right?
Yeah.
And so we thought it was a two-track tape, and we thought we could take it off and put it on the other way round and play the other side, right? I'm not being very lucid here. I think Roger did this and took it home, and it came up backwards, and the first thing you heard was the gong, and then all this backwards stuff. And the funny thing was that the riff is, there's a word for it, and it's palindromic. It's the same backwards as forwards, more or less.
Yeah.
So it sounded like the same riff, but backwards, and Roger at first thought that something had gone wrong with the tape and that the riff was still there. You know. Anyway, it sounded so good we thought we'd put it on the record. I think Mike did the edit, Mike Stone, our engineer, who's been with us all along. And he did such a good edit, which it's very difficult to splice something like that where there's not a proper splice point. But he managed to get it the first time, so you can't even really hear the join, I don't think. You know, you can't tell whether, because the riff is the same. And it just crosses over from backwards into forwards without you really realizing it.
You go on that tour, your own tour, where you were headlining yourselves, and the album was a success. From that point, what was starting to happen? You were moving towards sheer heart attack.
Yeah, in between times we'd been to America and did a very similar thing. Again with Mott the Hoople, strangely enough. It was more or less coincidence. But we did the same kind of tour with them. And during that time, the bits and pieces for sheer heart attack were taking shape. And I'd say that was the first album where we really felt aware of our audience and knew who we were writing stuff for. So there's a few tracks on that album which are more or less directly written towards the audience. I think that's when we became a proper band, you know. I think when you become properly identified with your audience, you become something different to what you started out at. You know, you start off playing more or less for yourself and hoping that people will like it.
The Sheer Heart Attack title, how did you arrive at that's a pretty amazing name in itself.
Yeah, Roddy thought it up. I don't know where he got it. He had a habit of coming up with strange combinations of words, and that was one of them. Yeah. It's supposed to mean something which stops you in your tracks, really. Yeah. Sheer heart attack.
At the time, I guess the stage act would have been evolving too. New things appearing all the time on stage, more and experimentation with sound, what you could do. Yeah. In the beginning, it was very hard to put the harmony stuff with the heavy bassist on stage because purely from a technical point of view, you couldn't get a big enough PA to take three voices and make them loud enough to compete with the guitar and the drums and the bass without them distorting. So that was one of the big difficulties we had in the first place. We knew we had to get hold of a big PA to make the whole thing work on stage. So it was only at that point where we could really afford to do it. And the same thing with the lights. From the very beginning, we knew the kind of thing we wanted to do with lights. We wanted to make it a complete show with the sort of costumes and the lights. Not really for its own sake, but to emphasise the music, because it's, as you say, it's sort of dynamic music, and we wanted to emphasise the light and shade with the lights. And but in the beginning, again, it was hard to get the means to do it. So we were always living way beyond our means. We were always conning money out of people, borrowing money to do it, and getting ourselves so deep in debt. Because as soon as we made any money off the albums, we never saw anything. It went straight out into trying to buy equipment and lights and stuff. Off that Sheer Heart Attack album, I guess, was a single that kind of broke the band in America, right?
Killer Queen. Yeah.
That opening line, She Drinks Smile and Shandon, was that from anyone that you knew, or?
I think it's pure fiction again. It's from Freddie's mind. It's a song about a high-class call girl. It can mean a lot of other things as well, actually.
Yeah, that song seemed to be the first, probably, single from the band that was to coin a phrase, instantly commercial. Like it was on and it was straight into your head. There was no sort of having to catch up on it.
Yeah, we were very worried about that in the beginning actually, because as soon as the album was roughly in shape, it was obvious that that was a very sort of instant thing, as you say. And we were worried about putting out something like that because we felt it was going to be a compromise towards being commercial, you know, because we thought people were going to think of us as a singles band rather than a sort of music band. And we tried to put out a double A side. We tried to put out Flick of the Wrist and Killer Queen as a double A side. It was a complete disaster because everyone just played Killer Queen, so nobody ever knew. You know, because we thought we'd still present the two sides, the heavy side and Killer Queen, which was lighter. But anyway, it turned out very well because I think people understood that it wasn't just a purely commercial thing. It was something that quite a bit of thought went into. She keeps. We generated harmonies on stage, apart from the three of us singing, is by using repeats, which is another thing which we wanted to do for ages, but didn't have the means to do. And what it amounts to is you sing a phrase and you time a repeat to recreate what you just sung a few seconds later, and when it comes back you can sing along with it and you can sing harmonies to that. So for instance, in Somebody to Love, in the middle bit we can do 3-part to begin with, it then comes back and you can overlay a part on that, etc., etc. Which is fun, you know. So what we do is gradually work up the harmonies. Eventually it sounds sort of like a choir, yeah. Sometimes it doesn't work, you know. It's very touch and go thing, because obviously if the tempo's slightly off, then you end up in a mess.
Have you had any nights where you suddenly found the...
Oh, it happens all the time, yeah. Yeah, but I think people realise what that's all about. You know? I don't think we're in search of perfection on stage. I get very bored with perfection on stage. What you're really after on stage is being exciting and interesting.
Brighton Rock was another track which got one play in Australia.
Again, that uses the repeats, and that was the first time it actually got on stage. It got on record. And I've been doing that solo in Brighton Rock for quite a while before Seattle. In fact, right back to that first Mott tour, I remember, when the first album was out, the solo was in the middle of Son and Daughter at the time, and I used to do it with one repeat, timed to work in phase. And at the time of Sheer Heart Attack, that was the way the solo was, and it was sort of condensed. I just did a fairly short one for the album. But by the time the album came out, I was already using 2, so instead of getting 2 bar harmonies, I get 3. So that's never got on record, and that's what we do at the moment.
30 or so different suits. I said, Sheer Heart Attack, that was the album, and I guess with Killer Queen, the single that catapulted the band into what a huge following everywhere. I mean, it was the big one.
Yeah, we're pleased, but we're pretty level-headed, you know. I think we knew that it wasn't all over. As soon as you have a hit album, that's not the end of the story, you know. You can't sort of rest. So we didn't really have time to get all that excited. We just kept on working. And we toured very heavily that year. And that was the first time we got to Japan. We did America again, we did England again, Europe, and one gig in Australia, which was in a festival.
That was Sunbury?
Yeah, Sunbury Festival, right.
Yeah, and I remember that, the band came out, and in Australia we knew nothing of Queen. Yeah. There you were, and everyone was kind of amazed, you know, what it was like about gig.
It was very, very strange. We took kind of a fairly innocent thing, great, over here. We got very ill on the flight because we had injections for smallpox. Feeling really dead. Because apart from the journey, which was about 30 hours or something, it was at that time, and it was very hot. You just couldn't handle the heat, having come from English winter. And we played the gig. Freddie had a lot of trouble with his ears. A lot of problems. It's very strange. He went swimming and completely went deaf. And he couldn't understand what was happening. He was getting very worried. We did the first night, and there were lots of strange feelings on stage. A lot of animosity from the not the Australian groups, but from the road crews, strangely enough.
Really?
And they didn't want to move our gear. They didn't want to give us any help. We finally went on stage and played the set. And I can remember there was an MC, I can't remember his name.
who, before we went on, said, don't worry, you've got some Australian groups afterwards, but here they are anyway, Queen. So we went on, we couldn't believe it. And in the beginning, everyone was sort of looking and not quite sure what to make of it, I think. So after a couple of numbers, it really went well, and we felt we got everybody going and everything. And we came off stage, and there was a lot of reaction. And the same guy went back on the stage and said, well, that's all over there now. And the crowd is still going and saying, we want more or whatever. And he says, do you want to hear more Queen, or do you want to hear Madder Lake? Madder Lake. That's what it was. Anyway, so that was it. And he basically managed to kill the sort of reaction from us, which is quite amazing. Yeah, he was actually on there about 5 minutes during this applause and eventually saying, well, okay, we're going to have Madder Lake now. So that was it. So we felt a little unhappy about that. But there's nothing we could do, isn't it? Yeah. But it wasn't, the musicians we met were great, it was just these few people. It's very heavy touring. To find out that not only had we not made any money out of it, but we were actually deeper in debt than ever, purely because the management wouldn't give us any money. And it's a long story, there was little things in the contract which they felt were on their side. And we tried very hard to patch it up, so basically having some belief in them. Yeah. So after that time we had no royalties and no proceeds from tours or anything. We were just basically sort of living from day to day. Yeah. And it was pretty hard to take, because we'd never particularly asked to have any material gains from what we were doing. But when it came to not being able to afford to even to rent your room that you were in, it was just getting ridiculous now, and we couldn't write the album because we were so worried about what was going to happen. And the management company were also refusing to spend any more money on tours, so we weren't going to be able to do the following American tour. So it was just getting ridiculous. So we had to get out. And we approached a few people, fairly well-known managers, and John Reed was one of them, and we just felt that was the right decision to make, yeah. So we went with John, and it took us up till that a month ago to get out of Trident properly. About 6 weeks ago, we finally got the last bit of us out of Trident, and we paid a lot of money for it. I think the band nearly split up as well, because we all had different ideas of the direction we should be going, and we were all very worried about managers and stuff. And it was hard to agree within ourselves what we should be doing, And there's so much politics going on, we had no time to think about the album, and we knew that this was the crucial album, and we had to make it a good one. So it was great to be able to find someone and say, look, John Reed, you are the manager, you take care of it, and we'll go away and make some music, which is just what we need, so we did. And we disappeared for a couple of months, routine for a long time, for Night at the Opera, and made the album, and everything luckily turned out okay.
Of course, the track that we obviously have to talk about is the one that was an amazing step forward, in not only in song, but in the time of the song. It was accepted by radio stations everywhere and was a huge success.
Bohemian Rhapsody. That was, I suppose, the next big breakthrough, and the biggest, because that seemed to appeal to people across the board. Again, a little strange, the story behind it, because we played it to the record company and to everyone else that was associated with this, and said, this is what we want to be the single, because we think it's representative of what we're doing. And everyone was against it, and they said, no, you can't have a single like that, it's too complicated, and no one's going to play it. So we put our foot down and said, no, you're going to release it in its entirety. And it was a gamble, because we thought either it's going to be a big hit and everyone's going to understand, or else nobody's going to play it and it's going to die a death. But we still thought it was worth doing, and luckily it happened. It's very strange, but we felt that it was more than anything else, it represented what we wanted people to hear of us as a band. And I'm very glad we did. We originally didn't plan to release any more singles of the album. It was a bit of a cop-out to have more than one single of an album, which nowadays I probably don't think, because it's been fairly well demonstrated that people who buy singles generally don't buy albums, and vice versa. But there was a demand for it in England. I don't know if you know Capital, which is the biggest London commercial radio station. They played You're My Best Friend a few times and got a lot of demand for it on the phones, and started
started saying, why don't they release this as the next single? So eventually we did sort of fairly well in England, although we were a bit late releasing it. By the time we actually got around to releasing it, it was probably all over. And it got into the top 10, but didn't do that well. In America it did very well, and definitely revitalised the album, I think.
I Love With My Car was Kamenliter in Australia, a really aggressive track.
Yeah, Roger's track.
Who's the car freak in the band?
Basically Roger. He claims that he wrote it to dedicate it to our sound mixer, who's a car enthusiast. I think it's probably a little bit of Roger and a little bit of that in it. Yeah, nice track.
How many cars has Roger got? Is he right into buying a whole fleet of them?
He's got a Range Rover and he's just bought himself a Ferrari, which he's very excited about.
Not a bad car to write a song about.
At the time, he didn't have any of those. He had an old Alfa, I think.
An old Alfa's not too bad.
Yeah.
But I talk about it as a song that, on stage, of course, is one we use a lot of tricks, and you, as one of the high points, you know the one I'm talking about, obviously, it's the Prophet song.
Yeah, that was the sort of the other epic, I suppose, on that album. Again, something which has been around for a long time, and sort of nearly went on the previous album, things like that. And I think very often it's good for a song to develop over a long period, because if generally the way we work is one person will write it and then you throw it out into the band and they make suggestions and you maybe try it out. And if you don't record it for a few months after that, then it has time to mature a bit and you perhaps catch it at its best point. I think that happened with Prophet Song. Yeah.
To recreate that on stage, I imagine you must have worked a lot of time to get that.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be hard, but it didn't turn out to be all that difficult, really. The first few times we played it was a bit shaky, but after that it seemed to get into the rhythm, and it's really not that hard to do, strangely enough. We do, on the last two we did the song complete, but on this one we do a sort of crossfade between that and White Man, which is on the new album, which is a sort of sequel to the Prophet Song. So, but we still have Freddie's solo in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's where he uses the repeats and nowadays the harmonizer.
For our listeners, could you just explain what a harmonizer does, how it enables Freddie to recreate that sound on stage?
It generates basically one harmony in theory, from any waveform that you put in. So in theory, you can put in a whole orchestra and twiddle a knob, and out it comes a third or a fifth higher, or an octave higher. It's used as a toy, really. It's not very serious. I don't really think that much of harmonizers, personally. There's a solo in the Prophet Song.
Oh, yeah.
A cappella bit, yeah.
Cappella voices.
Yeah, we use a harmonizer for that.
Again, launched it before, was the two albums, A Night of the Opera, A Day of the Races, Marx Brothers, of course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. More or less accidental, actually. We were looking at Marx Brothers films on cassette while we were making Night at the Opera. And somebody said, why don't we call the album Night at the Opera? And we all said, nah. Rubbish, But the more we thought about it, the more appropriate it seemed to be, because it had sort of mock operatic overtones, both in Bohemian Rhapsody and Prophet Song and things like that. And it had parallels with the Marx Brothers evolution, in that A Night at the Opera was the first film which the Marx Brothers had the opportunity to really spend as much time as they wanted to on an album and make a complete deal of it, because they've been under sort of financial and business pressure to make films fast up to that point. But for A Night at the Opera, they had everything their own way, and that was more or less how we felt about A Night at the Opera. We were just going to take as long as we felt we needed for it, and it was the most expensive album, I think, in terms of studio time and everything, which is very expensive.
At Groucho, I heard the story, I don't know if it's true, he sent you a telegram.
Yes, he did. Yeah, that was very nice. And we met him, we went to LA, where he lives, and he invited us over. And as soon as we got there, he got up on the piano and sang us this song. So a very strange comedy song. He's a very offbeat character, he's really getting on, but he's still got a lot of his wits about it. So he was standing by the piano, and this lady who was accompanying him singing, and then finishes, sits down and said, "Okay, now you sing a song. You're supposed to be singers." So we had to sing a song for him. We sang 39. We make all kinds of excuses. Oh, we can't do it, with the piano. We have to do it with the guitar. And he said, "Oh, it's all right. We've got a guitar." So we had to.
What's your track?
Yeah, sort of science fiction song, which I thought I would never write. Having come from a scientific background, I sort of thought there was no mixture between science and music, but it just sort of happened. But again, the thing which appealed to me about the story of 39 was that it's talking about how somebody feels it when they put in a time which they weren't born in, which is what the song was about.
Almost like perhaps Space Jewel's Time Machine in a way, going back.
Yeah, and I wanted to write it as a folk song because it was intended to sound like it was written after the event and it was already history.
I know at the opera at the races, was there, how can I put it, a lot of thought, as much time and planning put into the races album as, say, the seclusion and the planning for the...
Very similar, actually, yeah. We approached it in a very similar way. And again, some of the songs were carried over. So the two albums are almost parallel in a way. We felt... there are some things which follow through between the two albums, and there's some things which just sort of fill in the gaps. So, A Night at the Opera was the most varied thing which we'd done. You say 39 was very different, and also there were a few other tracks which were in completely different directions. Yeah. And we felt that there were other directions which the songs which we had around demanded. So we just thought, okay, we'll indulge ourselves again. And in a way approached it very similarly. I think the two albums form a sort of a complementary pair, and that was the reason why we had the white cover and the black cover, and the two crests, which is similar but not quite the same yet. And I think in the future they'll be seen as just part of an era which we went through. I think we're through it now.
Obviously, Somebody to Love. That was, to me, an extension of the Bohemian Rhapsody once again, moving it even further.
Yeah, again, we felt that our real audience would understand whatever we did, as long as we were sincere about it. So we didn't consciously try and follow up Bohemian Rhapsody.
I think there was even more harmony work in Somebody to Love, really, on a power.
Yeah, it's very strange, because the way... the approach to Somebody to Love is quite a lot different from Bohemian Rhapsody. It's quite a sort of straight, gospel-y song, really. And I think it's just the vocal sound which is similar, really. But yeah, you're probably right. I think there is a bit more. There are a few more overdubs. Somebody to Love.
Boogie track, which the Queen Boogie Rock is Tie Your Mother Down. That's pretty amazing. Track, once again, an album of contrast.
Boogie. Yeah, just another song, really.
Yeah, the lyrics are pretty amazing.
It's kind of, to me, a 50s feel about it. Perhaps not the music, but the words. And it's about young kids trying to get away from their parents, which was the sort of thing that people always wrote in the original rock and roll songs. That was what it was all about, wasn't it, really? Yeah. It's not totally serious, it's slightly tongue-in-cheek. Yeah. But,
what sort of like what my generation to the Who was, and like Schools Out to Alice, maybe that's what Queen.
Something like that, yeah. But it's not quite serious, it's intended to see the funny side. A lot of people, it's very strange, I can sit here and laugh about it, but a lot of people took it so seriously. I got quite shocked about it, because even in England, where people know, well, it's what we're at, there was a lot of disc jockeys and people who thought, my God, this has sinister overtones, and refused to play the thing and thought it was
baby bashing, mother bashing.
Yeah, they thought it was preaching violence or something, which if you listen to the words is rubbish, it's obviously not, but a lot of people took offence to it, which just goes to show nothing changes.
We've obviously got to head off to the recording studios. There's a man in the corner glaring at us intently. So,
it's nice to talk to you anyway. I'll take the opportunity of wishing everybody in Australia very best from us, and we hope we see you soon.
Yeah, is there any chance of a Queen tour in 77 for Australia?
I think early 78, the way things look at the moment.
Great, well, we'll hit the band with a new tour and new album, I guess,
Yeah, can't wait.